Professor Don Norman is a distinguished professor emeritus and the founding director of the Design Lab at University of California, San Diego, where he previously served as the chair of the Psychology Department and founder and chair of the Cognitive Science Department. He is also an adjunct faculty member of Electrical and Computer Science Engineering. Professor Norman is the champion of human-centered design as mirrored by his professional and academic associations. Business Week has listed him as one of the world's 27th most influential designer. He has published 20 books, translated into 20 different languages, including emotional design, design for all things. Most of you have read excerpts from his latest book, Design for a Better World, Meaningful, Sustainable, Humanity-Centered, to be published by MIT Press in March 2023. His numerous accolades include the Sir Mishra Black Medal for Distinguished Service to Design Education from the Royal Commission for the Exhibition of 1821, London, UK, and the Benjamin Franklin Medal in Computer Science from the Franklin Institute, Philadelphia. When I contacted him almost a year back after realizing how his structured design thinking course at Krea greatly resembles his design for everyday approach, I was pleasantly surprised with his forthcoming response. He also kindly agreed then to be part of an interactive Q&A session with our students, and here we are.
Okay, let us begin. I'm delighted to be here with you this evening. And what I really want to do with you is have a discussion about any topic you like. If I don't know anything, if I don't know the answer, I will tell you. But I have just finished a new book, and this is the main theme for tonight. It's called Design for a Better World. And you might say that the book started out a number of years ago. I gave a talk in Ahmedabad at the Institute of Design there, and I received actually this Nehru jacket. And more importantly in the jacket was this pin. This is the pin with 17 different colors on it, which represent the 17 important issues that the United Nations say that we must discuss and we must solve to make this nation, to make this world a better place. So the 17 societal development or sustainable development projects. Now, most of my work has been trying to make devices that are easier to use and easier to understand and to make people's lives better. At this point, I am switching. I want to make the world better, not an individual life better. That's important, but it's not enough because the world is facing many, many different problems today. We have wars, and we have climate change, and we have inequities, and we have prejudices, and we have many, many problems be facing us. And many of them are made by people. In fact, the most difficult problem that we have to overcome is not using technology. It's not about technology. It's about people and human behavior. Now, what is design? Design is a field that is actually the interface between the way we live and human behavior and the technology that we develop. Now, almost everything is technology. The desks you are sitting in now is technology. The clothes that you wear, that's technology. Anything that is made by people for a purpose is technology. And so technology dominates our lives, and we could not exist without technology. But the technology has destroyed the planet because in the attempt to make better and better technology and for companies to make more and more money, we've developed technologies that are beautiful and wonderful and destroy the planet when we mine to get the materials to make these wonderful devices, when we manufacture things and put out fumes and horrible substances into the water, the air, the land, when we use it and use up a lot of energy needlessly, and when we throw it away because it cannot be repaired easily, we discard it and throw it away, which destroys the environment, and often in poisonous ways. I have seen mountains of junk discarded Some of them can be as high as 200 meters, believe it or not. Burning, because when batteries go bad, they start catching on fire, they heat up. So if the problems we face today are created by people, designed by people, not professional designers, but people who are trying to do something for people, then maybe it's the designers can change it. And so I am hoping that the most important profession in the world should be design, because it is designers who create, who think. We don't solve problems. Engineers solve problems. Business people solve problems. But they never ask, is this the right problem? Designers are trained to ask, what is the real problem that we must solve? And designers, good designers, must be experts in people and technology, and more in politics and business, because major decisions are made by business people and by politicians that have the biggest impact on people's lives. So that's what my book is about. So that's my introduction. And now I turn it over to you, the discussion.
Thank you, Don. I'll hand it over to.
By the way, your sound is much better now.
My question was, so there are a few models which encourage to buy more and spend more. And we can recycle things, but like electronics is not recyclable. But at the same time, capitalism won't stop selling new products again and again. So how do you fix that disparity? Like when products are designed to be wasted and not to last as long as possible, even though they serve the same functions, how does that how can you fix that disparity and make the design more human-centric in that way? Because the waste affects human life, right? Like it poisons water and air and things like that.
So thank you. That was excellent. First of all, I could understand you clearly, so that we solved the technology problem. And second of all, that's an excellent question. Basically, the world is all screwed up. The system of capitalism that exists today is evil, because the system of capitalism that has been created, I don't know when, since thousands of years actually, is based on selfishness. And the people in power like to stay in power, and they will do anything they can to stay in power. And they want to get richer, more power, more money. And so we have created a product world where the goal of the product is to make money for the companies. It is not to make a better world. It is not to prevent destruction of the world. In fact, when you manufacture something and you put out money waste into the world, well, that isn't that wasted money? Aren't you destroying the world? Isn't that bad for the world? Well, when the economists measure what is good and what is bad for a company, they say, no, the product is what matters, and how much money you are spending is what matters, and how much profit you make is what matters. And when you put the waste material outside the factory, or when you have a mine that destroys the environment in order to get the materials, that's called an externality. It's external, and it's not counted. And that's evil, because it means if you do harm to the environment, it's not your fault, it's the environment's fault. It's somebody else's problem to fix. So one of the issues that I discussed in this book is that most designers say, I'm not interested in politics. Politics is evil. It's not the sort of thing I care about. Well, let me tell you, if you want to make a better world, you must care about politics, because the kinds of issues that we are now talking about destroying the world, about the evils of capitalism, putting money before people, that's a political problem. And the main way that we have to solve this is through politics. And so that's a very difficult job because we have people's self-interest at heart. So if you think about people's behavior, there are 2 or 3 things that govern it. One is all people look at the short term, not the long term. We try to make our lives better today, or maybe for the next few months, not for the next generation, not for the next generation of people. We look at the short term, not long term. That's why our companies look at short-term profits, not long-term. Many companies do things that are harmful to the company, but the harm will not be felt for another 5 or 10 years. And then the head of the company, the head of the company will go away and retire and have his money and let somebody else worry about the problem. That's evil, that's bad. We have to change that. People also do not understand the implications of their actions. It gets very hot in India. And so we are introducing air conditioning. Air conditioning is wonderful. It makes the world livable, especially as the temperature is going up. But air conditioning puts back into the world more heat than it takes out of the room. That's called the second law of thermodynamics. It means that nothing is completely efficient. And moreover, air conditioners require electricity, and electricity is generated many thousands of kilometers away from plants that often are polluting the air. And so using your air conditioner makes you more comfortable and makes the world worse. Now, you may say that your air conditioner is very small. It cannot do much harm. But there are 2 or 3 billion air conditioners in the world. And the total air conditioners of the world have done much harm, even though they make our lives more comfortable. Now, we actually know how to make air conditioners that are much more efficient and do not produce so much waste and wasted heat. But no, that would cost more money, and so companies do not do it. So the very first question, gets at the very heart of the problems I am trying to address in this book, Design for a Better World. And when I say we must be meaningful, we have to talk in meaningful terms so people understand what the real issues are. It must be sustainable, because if the world is no longer sustainable, which means it's collapsing, we have to not only make it stable and sustainable, but we have to repair all the damage that has been done. And finally, it must be focused upon not just people, but all of humanity, all living things, and the environment itself. So that first question is excellent because it is exactly the issues that we must face. You may be interested in studying design, wonderful. But you must also learn about business. You must also learn about politics. You must also learn about economics, because those things, business, politics, economics, control what you are allowed to do as a designer. So if you want to do good, we must overcome those 3 different barriers.
Hi, introduce yourself. I'm Dave, and I'll ask the next question also. I'm also a first year student at Krea. So this is a little more specific question. It's not as broad as the last one. What do you think of the right to repair movement in the US? And last week New York passed the right to repair bill. It's a very watered down bill, but because it does not cover many of the provisions that they originally intended to. And many companies like Apple, GM, and all these companies oppose the bill because it pushed them to providing schematics and making their products last longer. So I think I've already guessed your answer by general stance on the thing, on your worldview. But with Apple especially, what do you think of, because they claim to be, all these companies claim to make long-lasting products, but they won't support right repair. Opinion on that?
there are many companies that are saying, oh, we want to make a better world. And so we will, make it easier to recycle our goods. And that, or maybe we use better practices, but they are not going all the way. First of all, recycling is not the answer because the way that things are being made, it is difficult to reuse and recycle. Recycling is a bad answer to the problems that we face. The better answer is to design in such a way that there is no recycling, but rather, in fact, everything can be reused. Everything can be reused as it is. Everything can be made that lasts much longer. For example, the telephone, your mobile, you must replace it every 2 or 3 years for several different reasons. One is it's difficult or impossible to replace the batteries, difficult or impossible to replace the camera if a new camera is available, difficult or impossible, well, it's out of fashion. And if you have a really old phone, people make fun of you. All of that has to change. We can make phones that it's easy to keep up to date, easy to change the battery. There's a phone company in England that makes a nice phone that if after you've had it 5 or 6 years, the cameras are much better and you have an old camera, you can open up the phone, unplug the camera and plug a new one in. And that camera is still a good camera that you took out. So it can be used for many other functions. We don't design things like that today. That's a small company. It's struggling to be successful. But the companies that all brag about how much better they are, some of them really are, but most are not. If you take a look at Apple, for example, it has factories. Most Apple products are made by a company called Foxconn, which is actually a company from Taiwan, but it has the biggest operations in China and a number of operations in other countries like India. And that is so big and wasteful. They employ 1 million people to make all these phones that are designed not to last, watches that are designed not to last, computers that are designed not to last. And so, yes, Apple may actually be among the better companies, but it is still not solving the problem.
Thank you for your answer.
Hi, my name is Daniel George. Am I audible? I have a question about electric vehicles. So Tesla is producing EVs that are up to $30,000, much more affordable than more expensive ones. And you can also buy EVs for up to $200,000. They're becoming much more affordable. But as more and more people are buying EVs, many are asking the question, when this EV's battery is degraded, what will be done with it, and will it be done sustainably? And that's why many people are actually shying away from EVs. They're saying it's not really sustainable because one day the battery is going to get old and it's going to be disposed and it's going to harm the environment. What do you think about this? And do you think anything can be done about this?
That's an interesting question. Actually, an interesting personal event is that I just bought an electric vehicle. So I don't have it yet, but I will get it on Monday. And it's a new one. It's called the i4 from BMW for those who get these things. But yes, when we manufacture electric vehicles, we have the same problem with the plants. The plants are wasting energy. The plants are causing pollution. When we manufacture the electric vehicle, we have to mine for exotic materials because the electric motor requires very powerful magnets, and that requires very rare elements that are only available in a few countries. And we destroy the country in mining for it. And the batteries themselves have poisonous compounds and lithium and things that are very difficult to dispose of. These are all problems. But I believe the electric car is still going to be much, much better than the combustion engine cars that we have, because if you look at the internal combustion engine, the traditional car, it has many of these same problems, and it is not doing any good. Meanwhile, across the world, there are many research laboratories where the problems about batteries are being addressed. And I have seen in the research world that there are many good examples of new materials for batteries that are not so poisonous and not so dangerous, and new ways of reusing a battery when it is finished. Because the battery has many important components, even when it does not have enough electric charge, that they can be reused in many efficient ways. But the problem is to go from the research laboratory into the world can often take 5 or 10 years. But there are many people trying to address this problem. The other problem is to charge your battery, where does the electricity come from? And it can come from wind power, it can come from water power, it can come from solar cells, or it can come from electricity generating plants, which usually, for example, in India, most of those burn coal, which is polluting the air. And as we have more electric vehicles, we have to have more electricity. And if we only have coal burning plants, we're going to pollute the air even more. So these are one of the points in my book is I point out that we live in a complex system, but almost everything is related to everything else. And so it is too easy. The earlier question about companies who say we're doing better, well, they may do a little bit better, but they are part of this complex system. And unless they take into account the system, they may be doing worse. So the electric vehicle question is exactly a good example. The electric vehicle by itself is less polluting and less harmful, but it's part of a system. And where do the batteries come from? And where does electricity come from? And actually what we need to do is reduce the number of vehicles on the road. It used to be that people were the most important vehicle. People were the most important things in cities and countries. And today, no, it's the motor vehicles that are most important. We pave over huge amounts of land. We do all sorts of things. And we kill many people. 1 million people a year are injured or are killed, actually, through automobile accidents. And so we have to get at the entire system, not just the electric vehicle. But I have been in India, there's an attempt to change all the little 3-wheeled vehicles to make them all electric. When I was in China, China used to have many, many motorcycles all over the streets that were noisy and dangerous and producing fumes. Today, they are all electric. And it's actually a great improvement because China has some of the world's, actually China is a complex country. China is doing some of the world's best things to be efficient and to produce and to reduce pollution. At the same time, China is one of the biggest producers of pollution because it's a big country, just like India. And India also has the same mixed record, doing really excellent things on one side, but doing harm in others. So it's a system. All countries are mixed, doing harm and doing good. Does that help answer your question?
Thank you very much. And congratulations on your new iPhone.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello, am I audible?
Hello. Yes, that's a microphone that's wired in. Good, it's working.
My name is Pravalika, and my question is that one of the problems that exist in today's economy is that those who bear the costs often don't gain the benefit of things. Like with the Aral Sea disaster, the people who bore the cost of the sea shrinking did not get the benefits of the produced from the water taken. So with situations like these, what kind of solution do you think is apt? What do you propose?
We are back to capitalism. I have never understood why there is such a division between the administration of a company and the workers of a company. Why isn't it that we are all in it together? Why isn't it that we are all together trying to produce goods that will help the world and help people? But no, instead we have different levels of people working in the company. And as you point out, the administration of the company gets many of the benefits of the company, and the workers, some of them barely receive enough money to live on. And that's not right. The workers are actually more important than the administration, than the owners and the bosses, because it is the workers who make it all possible. But the capitalist system that we live in, it started with the Industrial Revolution, with the first factories in England, where the goal was to hire as many inexpensive people as possible, and to have, so these people have a really difficult life, but the people who owned the factory made all the money and had all of the benefits. And so the question is, how do we change that? As I said, that's a political problem. And so we all must get into the political issues in order to make the world a better place. I have seen in India a textile factory. And I remember when we visited it, we visited the owner first at his home. He served us tea. It was very gracious. And then he said, "Let me show you my factory." And we walked outside and walked to the factory, and the factory doors were all locked. And he had to take out a key and unlock the factory door to let us in. And when we went in, it was filled with young girls. Girls, because their eyesight was still very good, and therefore they could do the detailed sewing that was required for the textiles. But as they grew older, their eyesight, well, was being ruined by their task. And so they were let go. And again, young girls would come in, and they were locked in that factory, so that if there was a fire, they would not be able to get out. Well, that's the kind of bad treatment that the capitalist system has encouraged. And we must stop that.
Thank you so much.
Hi. My name is Radha, and I'm also a first year here at Krea. My question stems from, I guess it's a good segue because you just talked about politics, about the excerpt that you wrote in your book about politics. And in the concluding part of the excerpt, you said that your particular definition of politics falls under the category of political moralism. And my question is that if we were to comment on the design of politics, should we have to change the definition of it as the first step? And if the design had to be changing in itself and it's not constant, what do we do about the meaning of the actual concept?
Well, the definition comes after. I think we must change the way that we are running the world. We must change the economic system that governs us. We have to do it slowly. I think personally, politics is necessary and a good thing, but it's a politics that says in any group of people, there are many different opinions and many different points of view, and they often are different and contradictory. And so the art of politics is trying to find a course of action where everyone is satisfied as much as possible. Usually not everybody will get what they want, but they will still all get something good. And over time, things get better and better and better. So politics is the art of bringing people together who have different points of view, but they live together, so they must find a way of living together in a good way. Well, that is seldom what really amounts to, that's seldom what happens, because instead each politician is trying to optimize their own benefits, or they want to get more money, or maybe in order to be elected, they must cater to a very narrow point of view. And so that's what we must change. And if we can change that in a positive way, the definition will follow, because the definition describes what happens already. Just changing the definition won't change behavior. So we have to start changing behavior, and that's a design problem. How do we design for better behavior? The problem with that question is, I believe it's the most important question, but we don't have an answer.
Thank you so much.
Professor, am I audible to you?
Yes.
My name is Srinidhi, and I'm also a first year. My question is a bit more on the specific end. So in your chapter called From Humans to Humanity, you talked about how foreign aid experts often lack a deep understanding of the local indigenous people and their skills and resources. So my question to you is, what do you think is a contributing factor to that? Why do you think that happens?
Oh, that's easy. Do you understand what my life is like in the United States? No. Do you understand what it's like in Pakistan or China or in the middle of Africa? No, because cultures develop in all of these independent countries over a lifetime, over generations, and people think differently. If you learn different languages, you will learn the languages are structured differently. It isn't, when you learn a new language, it isn't enough to learn the words, because you have to learn how the words come together and what is important. And so that it is not easy for someone from one country or one place to go to another place and understand the way people live and think and behave. When I visited many small places in rural India, and when I would come back and tell my friends who were Indians, tell my Indian friends about where I had been, they were amazed, because many of my Indian friends have come from the very large cities, from wealthy parents, had a very good education, and they themselves, the fact that they are from India does not mean they understand all the people who live in India. Just like I do not understand all the people who live in the United States. They have very different lives. So therefore, what I say is we shouldn't try. Yes, we should try, but we shouldn't make believe that we understand other people. When we go in to help other people, what we should do is look around. There are 8 billion people in the world, and there are many, many intelligent, creative people all over. You don't need an education to be intelligent and creative. And when you go to a local village, say, you will find that the people already understand many of their problems, and there will be people who are already trying to solve them. So our job as designers is not to tell them what to do, but to help them, to say, oh, that's very interesting, and but I see that you don't have enough money to do this, or maybe you need some other materials. But so the designer's role is to be a mentor, to be a helper, not to try to impose their view of the world upon others.
Thank you.
Hello, Professor. Am I audible?
Hello?
Huh?
Yes, yes.
My name is Avanti, and I'm a first-year student. I think you briefly touched upon my question, but so this is with reference to your idea about democratizing design. So in case there is a conflict of interest between designers and local communities, whose opinions should be prioritized? Because you said the designers should be like mentors, but in case they're not on the same page as those who they are trying to help, whose opinion should be prioritized? Because designers may have better technical skills, but the local communities are the ones who have experienced the problem firsthand. So if there is a conflict of interest, how do we resolve it, and whose opinion should be prioritized in that case?
There will always be conflicts of interest. But after all, we should always ask, why are we doing this? For whom are we doing this? And so if we're trying to do this for other people, those people should have the final say. And sometimes it may mean that we can't do it because people may say they need something that is actually impossible. Or maybe it is quite possible, but requires more money or different facilities than exist. In which case, I think we have to, it's difficult. We have to try to figure out how we can work together and do something that's good. But maybe sometimes we'll say, I'm sorry, but we cannot, you know, your hopes are very nice, but we cannot do it. But for the designer to say, well, you're wrong and I'm right, that doesn't do anybody any good. There are many projects in the world. People spend billions of dollars or euros to do this. It takes many years, but it's the outside experts come in and try to say what's good. And in some sense, they are correct, but if the people do not accept it, it fails. So it's going to have to be the people that we're designing for that have the final say.
Thank you. Hello, Dr. Norman. It's a privilege to be here and have a chance to interact with you. My name is Kanika. So my question is, what kind of changes in design do you think should be made to improve situations, environmental or help reduce environmental degradation? Are the policies, protocols, agreements, and etc. enough?
Actually, I think that in many ways, if we had put into action the kinds of things I'm recommending, which is called the circular economy, where you may not even notice much of a difference. Your computers may be a little bit heavier. Your mobile phone will be a bit thicker. But on the whole, it just requires a different way of getting the materials, a different way of assembling things, and a different model. Because today we make money by selling you a new device. And therefore, we want to make that device not last very long, so you have to buy a new one. But instead, what we should do is we should make money by making it something that's useful for you, but that will last a very, very long time. So maybe you have to pay me some money every year to keep it up to date and make it better. But the total money you're going to give me is not much different than the money that you spend today buying a new product. So that in many ways, your life is just the same, or should cost you the same amount of money, but there's less harm to the environment and to the world. So my goal is that we should live comfortable and good lives in a comfortable and good environment.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Dr. Norman. My name is Priya, and I'm a first year as well. In your most famous book, The Design of Everyday Things, you coined the new famous term user-centered design, which is basically where products should primarily be designed based on the needs of the users. My question is that I have designed a tool for the use of left-handed persons who I feel are not represented in the world with respect to day-to-day tools and gadgets. However, while conducting my research, I have found that almost all left-handed people have adapted to right-handed tools by the time they are in their teenage years. So I believe that we need to arrest this conditioned behavior and catch them very young. And I'm coming to a roadblock when I have to change mentalities. So I wanted to ask you, how do we address this design issue?
The problem you talk about is even greater than that of just people who are left-handed. We have people who are colorblind. And the most common colorblindness is with men. 10% of males are red-green colorblind. Yet traffic lights are red and green. These people have great trouble distinguishing the colors. And in fact, it's very common that when designers design things, or especially when engineers design things, we put in the lights to say what's happening, and we use red and green. So it isn't just left and right-handed, but basically almost everybody has a handicap. There's a wonderful woman who wrote a book about this, who pointed out we all have handicaps. So for example, if I am carrying a baby in my right hand, I'm left-handed. I can't do things with my right hand because it's holding a baby, or maybe it's holding a shopping bag. And so why can't we design things that can be used with either hand? And it isn't just whether you were born left-handed or right-handed. I do address a little bit of that in the first edition of my book, because I found some stores that sold things just for left-handed people. One of the things that left-handed people have trouble doing is writing with a fountain pen, because with a fountain pen, the ink does not dry right away. And if you're left-handed, as you write, your hand goes over the ink. So we have to have different ink if you are left-handed than if you are right-handed. There is an issue about the economics. If roughly 10% of the people are colorblind, roughly 10% of the people are left-handed. Well, many companies say, well, let's make for the 90% and not for those 10%. So, but the solution is not that. The solution is, can we make things that are usable in either hand? A scissors that's usable for the left-handed or the right-handed. Devices, the controls can be moved from left to right. So I believe it is possible to design things that work for all people, whether you are handicapped, whether you are holding a package, holding a baby, whether you only have one arm, maybe you have no arms, if you are blind, if you are deaf, it is possible. And here's where technology is actually a benefit, because sometimes technology helps us overcome some of these deficits, problems. But I want to point out, everybody has these problems. Some of them are temporary, some of them are permanent. And, but yes, the problem of making things only for right-handed people is an example of a much larger problem that faces all of us.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Don. It's Vahe I'm also a first year student. So you have written an article, how Apple is giving design a bad name. In that article, the 25th paragraph says that you joined Apple shortly after Jobs departed and then left shortly after Jobs returned. And during that time, you were not present, and that was the time when Apple shifted from easy to use and easy to understand products to today's products. At that time, they didn't even provide a manual, not like these days they don't provide a charger. So my question is, how do you believe that these changes have affected learnability, usability, and productivity for users?
I think that what happened when with Apple is Apple had, in fact, the easiest products to use. That we were very proud of the fact that when you bought an Apple product, you did not have to have an instruction manual because you could always figure it out. You could see it, you could understand everything that was there. But Apple then, though, stopped trying to make their products easier and better to use, but instead they tried to make them more attractive. And although you can make an item more attractive and not destroy its usability, that is not what happened. So the emphasis on aesthetics, on beauty, is what drove Apple away from usability. And what happened was Apple hired more and more people who were trained as industrial designers to make wonderful, beautiful, lightweight objects. And they got rid of many of their software, their user experience designers, who were making it easier and easier to use and understand. Now, the industrial designers were brilliant. They did an excellent, fantastic job. And if I look around the table, what I see right now, I see lots of Apple computers. So they were very successful. But I've always felt that that success did not have to cause products that were harder to use. But unfortunately, it did. So if you look at the Apple iPhone, which unfortunately is now the way all phones are, well, the designers decided that words were ugly. And so they made the words, they tried to get rid of the words. And second of all, they tried to make, if there were words that were necessary, they made them very small. And they made them in light gray, so you couldn't see it very well, because it destroyed the beauty. Well, that's a kind of a conflict that is easy to solve. It's the conflict between usability and aesthetics and appearance. But you shouldn't have one dominate over the other. Both of those are important. And I think Apple made the wrong decision. And unfortunately, because Apple then became very, very popular and successful because the products were so beautiful and wonderful, that other companies followed. So that was why I wrote that article.
Thank you, Don. Hello, my name is Shiv. I actually have 2 questions. I hope that isn't a problem. My first question is related to your book, The Design of Everyday Things. I think in the second chapter, you talked a lot about if a user isn't able to use a product, it isn't the user's fault, it's that the product is designed badly. So I read somewhere online, I'm not entirely sure, in national parks are really difficult to design because there's a big overlap in the dumbest humans and the smartest bears. So my question is, at what point is it really the fault of the design and not just the user who just can't use it, who just will never be able to figure it out? That's my first question.
Now, what one question at a time, please.
Okay. Do you want to hear the second question and then decide which one you want to?
No, let me answer this one. Why do you think, so what you are saying is some people are smart and they can use things, and some people are stupid and they have trouble using things. That's a very simple way of you have a responsibility to make things usable by everybody. And so an easy way out is to say, well, some people are so stupid, they can't use it properly. No, I don't believe that's true. I believe that if you actually try to understand the people and watch them, maybe talk to them, you would discover that simply that you are designing things that are not appropriate for them. But there are solutions that will make it completely appropriate for everybody. So I think that, no, you are wrong, that basically, I would say that almost everybody, you can design for almost everybody. Now, are there some extremes? Yes, but the extremes are very, very small in number.
Okay, I can accept that, I suppose. Thank you.
No, that took care of all the questions. Okay.
You can go ahead if you want.
I have one question. So something like carbon captured bricks, right? I've heard like if you can't design out of everything, because there are people who drive like diesel SUVs or gas SUVs, and they're like, carbon capture will take care of everything. There is a technological solution to everything. Carbon capture is not like completely feasible all the time, and people don't want to change their lifestyle. So we can live a comfortable life and just like design things which which don't ruin the environment. But there are some places where you need to make sacrifices. Do you think that's a correct way to look at things, or do you think design is the only way out of things, and we don't need to temper ourselves to consume products differently?
I had trouble understanding. Can you? I need a simple summary of the question that is being asked. Okay. Yeah, do not touch the microphone. That makes more noise.
So the arguments that people say that I will drive my like gas car because carbon capture will just capture the carbon out of the air and make bricks out of it. But carbon capture is not like feasible. So does it at that point, is the technology solution better? Or do you just need to change your lifestyle because you can't design your way out of everything? I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. I think we need all solutions. So the carbon capture problem is a good one. Carbon capture is very valuable, and we must do it. But the better way is not to have carbon in the air in the first place. So I believe that we will have to have multiple solutions to these problems. That it is not enough to say, well, sure, my car creates pollution or my factory creates pollution, but that's okay because I have technology that takes it out of the air. No, it won't, because the technology is important and we should use it, but wouldn't it be better to have a factory that didn't produce pollutions in the first place, or an automobile that didn't pollute in the first place? Because no technology is perfect. And then the technology itself, it may create new problems. So that trying to solve the existing problems by adding more technology is a temporary solution. It is not, in my opinion, it is not the way that it is not the correct solution. The correct solution, let me back off. I said earlier that what designers do is we don't try just to solve the problem. We try to back up and say, what is the cause of the problem? If I eliminate the cause, then the problem goes away. Well, the technologists say, well, the problem is too much carbon dioxide in the air. So we will create technology that pulls the carbon dioxide out of the air. And I say, no, that is solving the symptom, not the underlying problem. So what we must solve is why there is too much carbon dioxide in the air. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, hello, Professor. I'm Nishan, and it's an honor to meet you, usually. So, I'm actually glad Nandish brought in the thing about carbon again, because the question I had was related to your carbon problem in India. And yeah, he got it back to that point, at least to an extent. So, you did talk about how India is one of the major contributors to carbon dioxide in the air, which is very much true. But if you also look at it from in the per capita angle of it, it's beyond a lot of countries, including the US. So what I'm saying is, if you look at global north countries, which have a relatively high per capita emission of carbon, they fall more or less into the developed world, and they're more or less industrialized too. So in one way, they can afford to prioritize carbon emissions as one of the major problems. But at the same time, if you take the example of India, where while there are very industrial cities like Bangalore and Mumbai, there are also places like Hampi that are not industrialized at all. And it has a lot, I've taken the example of Hampi specifically because it has a lot of potential for generating revenue within India. But because of the lack of industrialization there, it is, I mean, if you look at the houses there itself, it's a medieval style housing architecture. So the point I'm going to make with this is that when you say that there are several differences between in the problems or the priorities of problems people face within the global north and countries like India or let's say even Africa, let's say Africa was to develop, given the size was to industrialize, they are one of the lowest HDI indexes in the world right now. If they are to develop, they would need to industrialize. And given that they have a population, the continent has a population similar to that of India and China, it would mean that they would also have a great emission of carbon in the world overall. So wouldn't you say that in one way, India and Africa and in many other third world countries cannot afford to prioritize carbon emission and must focus on industrializing first, given the amount of poverty that exists there because of the lack of industrialization? And wouldn't you say that the globalization of, like, I agree with your points on why design must be human centered, but wouldn't you say that globalizing people as one globe rather than acknowledging that they have several differences within nations and within the third world and the first world, wouldn't you say that this would be a recipe for disaster in one way, because there are several different problems they have within.
So thank you for the question, because some of the questions you are asking, you or everybody, are some of the most difficult questions to solve, some of the most difficult questions in the world to solve. And it is not going to be easy, because if it was easy, it would be solved. And so, in fact, I'm only interested in working on problems where we do not know the answers, where they are difficult, because the easy problems, well, other people can solve those. The kinds of problems you talk about in India and Africa actually occur all over the world. We have the same problem in the United States. We also pollute a huge amount, and the people who do it refuse to stop. Why do they refuse to stop? Because their lives count on it. People have jobs. Without jobs, they cannot. The way our economic system works, you need a job to pay you money. You need the money to buy your food, to buy housing, to buy education, to buy books, to live. And the jobs pollute. So we have a part of the country where we mine for coal. And we have a part of the country where we produce electricity through coal burning. And that's true in China, and that's true in India, and that's true all across the world. It's true in Brazil, where they are also facing major problems. So the problem is that if we try to make it better for the world, we're going to make it much worse for people whose lives depend upon the way that they are living today. And to try to change the way they are living today into a better way is a very difficult problem, which involves new kinds of businesses, new ways of living, and the political issues. And so it is unfair to blame a country like India for the pollution, because the people who are doing the blaming are the rich industrialized nations like the United States, who already did all their harm to the environment, and now we're saying everybody else should do better too. It's too late. So the problem to solve these problems is going to take a very long time. It takes 10 to 20 years to change the method of production to try to minimize the amount of harm that we are doing to the environment. And that's a long time, but what that means is we must be in a rush to start now, because if we want it to be over with in 10 or 20 years, we must start immediately. But this will harm many people. It will go against many people's interests. So it's going to be a very difficult problem. So my answer is not an answer. I'm saying that the problem you discuss is very important and very true. And getting to a solution will be very difficult. And maybe there will be some new solutions that we cannot think of today, but that creative people, from the people who are younger, like all of you, may be where the solution comes from.
Hello, Prof. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so it's been said in the book that the funders who invest large sums of money are very enthusiastic to see the results And hence, there's a lot of time pressure on the people working on big projects to get immediate results. So my question is that what can be a possible solution to relatively decrease the time pressure?
It's almost the same answer as before. Basically, when we do activities, we look for immediate results. I think it's built into our systems that if we look at how do people understand the cause of something, it's when we do an action and then there's some response immediately following. And if we do an action and the response doesn't come for another year, well, we don't even recognize that that action was relevant. And so we do, I think we're genetically wired, genetically born to think for immediate results. And that's a problem because the problems that we are facing on Earth did not happen overnight. They happened over many hundreds of years. And so we cannot solve them overnight. It will take us a long time. And yet people are always anxious for immediate results. We have to, this is an education problem that people have to understand that we cannot change overnight. We have this problem because there are so many people who want a better world, and they are trying to insist that we should change everything immediately to get to a better world. And they are very angry when we do not change immediately. And they do not recognize that you cannot change complex ways that people live immediately. It takes a generation or two. So it's a difficult problem.
All right, thank you.
Hello, sir. My name is Shraddha. So first of all, thank you so much for your time today. This is a very interesting conversation that we're having. So my question is, first of all, I found it very interesting how you had experience in psychology and cognitive science as well, along with design and engineering. So my question is, how do you think studying psychology and cognitive science can help the process of design and engineering? Yeah.
I believe that design is such an important issue and complex one that we must bring together all of the knowledge that exists in the universe. And so no single person will have all the proper knowledge. And therefore, most of the work will come from teams of people. And so in that team of people, we must have people who understand the technology that we're talking about, who understand the technical issues. We must have people who understand people. So people from the social sciences, from psychology, cognitive science, sociology, anthropology. We must have people who understand the political process, people from political science. We must have people who understand the economics, people from economics and also from the business world. And so some of the best people who understand people are not psychologists. They're writers. Because psychologists study, the university system forces people to study very narrow topics, to be very, very detailed. Whereas if you are writing a novel about people in the world, you have to understand how people operate in the world. And so many of the best insights about these problems come from people in the humanities, not from people in the sciences. And so your question is a good one, but you restricted it to 2 or 3 fields. I'm saying that we must bring in the knowledge from all of the fields, and people who can work together to make a better world.
Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Norman. My name is Manavi. First of all, thank you so much for taking our time for this interaction. And this is not really my question, but it was a question you brought up in your book by Ezio Manzini, who asks, what is the role of design experts in the new design coalitions in building a collective design intelligence, one that cultivates diversity and is able to take us out of the environmental, social, and cultural catastrophe we are falling into? So I was wondering if you would have a possible answer after having written your book. So, yeah.
I thought actually I was already giving that answer, that I think because, designers don't have a topic. We're not experts in anything. What we are experts at is a method. And the design method, which is partially is design thinking, a way of approaching a problem. It's a way of bringing together people from different disciplines to solve the problem. I think that is what makes us unique. A few other disciplines do this, but most of them try to optimize the money, the cost, try to optimize time, try to optimize people's productivity. Whereas design tries to optimize the experience of the people that we're designing for. And so this is why I think design is unique. We design we have methods, but we don't have knowledge about, we don't have content knowledge. So we must bring in the content experts, but together using our methods and their knowledge, we can produce wonderful results. And that's a pretty unique field. There are no other fields that do it this way. That's what I think is powerful about design.
Thank you.
This is sort of a side comment, but because we're talking about technology and its role. Notice in this class, we started off with very bad technology. And so we were using a very convenient technology, a microphone that we could walk around and use, but I could not understand what people were saying. And we found eventually a technology solution. And so in this case, this is an example where a technology solution turned out to be what we needed. Namely, all of you come up to this one microphone that is wired into the system, and I can understand what you are asking for. So technology sometimes is the answer, and it's almost always a part of the answer. Okay, now your turn to ask the question.
Hello again. My question is, last year in 2021, the IPCC report came out, and it was quite disturbing. I guess I'm not sure how else to describe it. A lot of discourse I saw from that was that a lot of people felt quite apathetic, as in, like, they just felt there's nothing we can do. The world is heading towards catastrophe, and as an individual, there's nothing they can really do. So there's no point in even trying to work towards a more sustainable world, which I personally think doesn't work, because if we're trying to change policy on a governmental level, we need a lot of people to be fighting for that. So my question is, how do we affect the human element? How do we make people more actionable in terms of fighting climate change? Did that make sense?
So what is happening is that the leaders of the world get together every year, every couple of years, different meetings, and they decide there's some major problems, and they sit and they discuss, and then they sign an agreement that each country will go back and help solve the problems. And then they come back the next year, and then nothing has changed. And they come back the year after, and nothing has changed. In part because the leader of a country doesn't have that much power. Well, let me just talk about India. Yes, you have a prime minister who leads the country, but you have many, many separate states and many, many different issues. And it doesn't matter. Modi cannot cause immediate change, even if he wanted to. The same is true in China. the same is especially true in the United States. The president of the United States signs these agreements and says, yes, we must do better, and then comes back to the United States, and we have the way our politics works. We have a House of Representatives, we have a Senate, all these people who refuse to do what the president says we must do. So here's my answer to the problem. Well, first of all, actually, every year it is getting slightly better. And the way I put it is this way. The bad news is that the climate change is here. We are having heat waves, we're having storms, we're having drought, no rain, no water. We're having floods, too much water, too much rain. We are having diseases. We are having a large number of issues. That's the bad news. The good news is that climate change is already here. We are having floods, we are having fires, we are having drought, we are having hunger, we are having floods, well, etc.
Yes.
The good news is because of the bad news, people now are starting to understand and to take this problem seriously. And it may be that people will not actually band together until we have even worse problems. Because people are very good when there's a problem, a disaster. People are very good at getting together to overcome and help the people who have been damaged in the disaster. But they are not good at preventing the disaster in the first place. So maybe the solution is, it's a bad one, but maybe the solution is we have to wait until there is a worldwide set of disasters, and then the people of the world might do something about it.
I see. Okay. Thank you for the question. Thank you for your answer.
That's not an optimistic answer, by the way, but I think that's a realistic one.
Hello, Don. We'll have last two questions. Is that okay?
Okay.
Hello, Professor. I hope you can hear me. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to take time for this Q&A. My name is Tia, and I'm a first-year student. My question is regarding the basic foundation of design thinking. In the future, do you think that the process and the principles of design thinking would change? If you think so, then in what way do you think that the change would occur?
I'm sorry, ask the question again, but speak a bit more slowly.
Okay.
No, just the last part, just the last sentence or two.
In the future, do you think that the process and the principles of design thinking would change? If you think so, then in what way do you think that the change would occur?
Good. Well, first of all, I think, of course, the principles will change because I'm a firm believer in change. That's the scientific method. Scientists actually are always changing their minds. This causes great confusion in the public because the public thinks that science is a body of facts. And when you ask a scientist a question, you expect the answer, the truth. But no, science is a search for better knowledge. And as more evidence comes in, well, science changes its opinion, changes its mind. And that's what I do. I was trained as a scientist, and when I learn new things, I change what I am doing and change what I'm thinking. So I do believe these principles will change, but I don't know how, because if I knew how they would change, I would change them already. But I have changed it in one way because I started with the 4 principles of human-centered design, which is solve the core root problems, focus on people, take a systems point of view, and also because we don't really understand human behavior and it's so different from place to place or even from year to year, we have to test and refine and keep changing what we are developing. That's the basic principles of human-centered design. But now I have already changed it. I say, let us do something that is humanity-centered. And there I say, they're the same principles, but larger. 5 principles, which is to solve the core problems, the same, but focus on the entire ecosystem of all people, all living things, and the physical environment. That wasn't there before. Take a long-term systems point of view because most of the problems result from the way that different parts in the world interact with each other. That wasn't there before. And continually test and refine, yeah, that was there. And then also design not for a community, but as I said to an earlier question, have the community come up with their own solutions, because otherwise they will not accept them. So those are already some changes. How this will change in the future? Well, as I said, if I knew how it would change, well, I wouldn't wait. I would do them now.
Thank you, Professor.
Hello, Professor. Thank you so much for what has been a very insightful discussion that we've had with you. So with eyes towards the future, there was one particular aspect that I think we didn't really touch upon. We spoke about climate change, we spoke about governments, etc. And there was the mention of how it's incredibly hard to understand the behavior of individuals. And with that at the back of our heads, perhaps we can now look at artificial intelligence and those who are actually working on the design of artificial intelligence. And coming back to the design thinking method, the first stage of the design thinking method is to empathize with all stakeholders. So my question is, when we are designing artificial intelligence, is the artificial intelligence also a stakeholder that we need to empathize with? And how do we go about solving this particular problem, given the fact that it is modeled after human behavior and we do not understand how the behavior of all of us, how we actually, that human behavior is something that's difficult to understand in and by itself?
Well, artificial intelligence is, well, first of all, let's look at those two words, artificial. It is not the same as human intelligence. People forget that it is artificial. It is different. Second, is it intelligent? Not really. What the current field of AI is very clever techniques, but basically it is what is called pattern recognition. So the AI systems basically are exposed to huge amounts of existing behavior, existing books, existing papers, existing behavior of people and of technology and of the world. And when you ask a question, it goes and it tries to find things that match and puts together a very wonderful response. But the response is often completely wrong because it has no intelligence. It cannot judge the quality of the response. And it quite often comes out with nonsense. So, and moreover, the basic underlying network is called a neural network. And a neural network is a very clever, very powerful method of doing things, but it is impossible to understand what is called the weights, the way in which it has structured itself. And so we cannot use artificial intelligence to understand human intelligence because they are equally difficult to understand. We know how we built it, we know the rules that it follows, but we don't know what it produces by itself. However, I believe that what will happen with AI is that we will find it to be a very useful tool, just like the computers you are using. You don't have to understand the computer to be able to find it very valuable, especially because it allows you to communicate and to share among people all across the world, or to find knowledge from all around the world. But when you find the knowledge using, say, a search engine, you have to evaluate whether this is true, whether this is useful. So you still have to use your own judgment. Well, with artificial intelligence, I think that what we will do is we will find that I can ask the system to do things for me, and then it's up to me to decide whether that's useful or not, and to modify it. So I have been experimenting with a number of the new systems. For example, I said, what if I could draw the diagrams for my books? And so I asked the system to draw people standing in line, draw people standing in line who are unhappy, draw somebody trying to barge into the line, interact with the line. And sometimes it may take me many hours to learn how to ask the right question and so on before I get a useful result. So that is just like a regular tool, like your computer. It takes you many hours sometimes to get it right, or even a calculator. A calculator helps you solve the problem, especially powerful calculators that can solve algebra or calculus, but it's still people who have to decide what the problem is and whether the answer that the calculator gives us is useful. And so that's what I think of AI.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you.
Don, there are two more questions. Would that be okay for you to?
Two more questions after the last, which was supposed to be the last two. Okay, go ahead.
You know, it's about time, so if it is okay, then
It's getting late for you.
Yeah, it works for us. If you could take one from a student. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, go.
Good morning to you, Professor Norman. I read online that you were part of the investigative team that went to the 3 Mile Island, accident. I'd like to know from you, what sort of insights you had, in this investigation, and what insights you had from that could throw some light on into this rather unpredictable future that we're walking into.
I'm sorry, I missed the important part of the beginning. Keep a little bit away from the microphone. Back up a little bit. Yes, that's better. Now ask what was the main theme?
So I read online that you were part of the investigative team that went to the 3 Mile Island disaster, the site. And
Yes.
what I wanted to know is, there's a lot of talk about, nuclear energy and so on. And as we're looking forward into the future, ways of doing things. What were the insights that you had as a member of that team, and about human behavior, about technology, about several of these aspects, and could you share with us some of those insights?
Well, nuclear power has many advantages. It is actually an excellent source of energy. However, the plants that have been built are badly built. They were not appropriate for use providing power for people. They actually came from the military, which was a very different environment. And today we have better designs for nuclear power that are smaller plants, easier to make. They should all be the same. We should make different plants the same so that when you've learned one, you know how to work the other. But today also, all the plants that exist each one is different than the others. And that makes for problems. Second, they're very large. And with large things, when things go wrong, it's a disaster. So the first major problem was the 3 Mile Island problem in the United States that you talk about. The second major problem was the Chernobyl, which was the problem in Ukraine, where the Russians who were operating the reactor, it didn't have the right safety features, and they were trying to test the safety features. So to do this, they turned off all the safety controls, which was pretty ridiculous. And that caused great difficulties. And the third problem happened in Japan, where the reactor was fine. I remember I gave a talk in Japan about safety and nuclear power. And they all laughed at me saying, see, the United States had a problem, but we never do because we are very good. We don't have problems. The Japanese were very arrogant, and yet they had a problem. And it was because it wasn't with the nuclear power plant. It was with the big tsunami, the water waves that came in and destroyed all of their backup generators, which caused the difficulty. So any large system has problems. And so the newer solutions are to have many small nuclear reactors that are much easier to control and much less harmful if things go wrong. And some of them are designed to automatically shut down and be safe if something goes wrong. But there's still one remaining problem that nobody has solved, is that it uses uranium as a fuel. Uranium is radioactive and dangerous to people. And when the uranium no longer is adequate to make nuclear power, what do you do with it? Because it is still dangerous for people. And nobody has solved that problem. And until we've solved that problem, I don't think that nuclear power can be the answer. But it's in many countries, it has been very valuable and useful in providing pollution-free energy. But again, this is like the world is a complex place, and things that are really excellent in one dimension may be bad in a different dimension.
Yeah, it's me.
This is your third visit, yes.
Yeah, this is the last question. So, okay. So we talked about nuclear power, and my friend Ishan talked about how developing nations don't have energy security, just clean energy. Now, in the US, there's a company in Richmond, Washington, which is working on commercial nuclear fusion power, which is feasible. They have determined its feasibility, and they're working on designs that are commercially viable. In a few years, it will be out. My question is, with nuclear power becoming like feasible, and I think the US Department of Energy also published a report showing that it is possible, ignition is possible, and other companies working on it. When it becomes commercially viable and feasible, we should have that technology, because energy security and energy issues are global. And like one handful of companies having like access to this technology, which is almost on a level of sci-fi. What do you think about it? Who should have the control? And not everyone has different opinions on it, but I want to hear like your opinion as like a designer, not just of technology, but human-centric design, because energy is essential for humans, right?
Well, everything you say is correct, except nuclear fusion is not here. When I first came, when I started with my first job at the University of California, there was a company just a mile away that was studying nuclear fusion. This was in 1966. That was a long time ago. And it said, in 10 years, we will have solved nuclear fusion. 10 years later, they said, in 10 years, we will have solved it. Today, they are now saying, in 10 years, we will have solved it. It is a very difficult problem. All this time, until just recently, it took the nuclear fusion that did exist only lasted for a very short amount of time, less than a second. And the amount of energy it took to create it was greater than the energy that it produced. So that wasn't very useful. Today, for the first time, we can now do nuclear fusion that produces more energy than it takes to produce it. However, it doesn't last very long. And it is still, so people are now not saying in 10 years, they're now saying in 20 years. In 20 years, this will be a viable product. Well, watch, I mean, because every scientist and every new technologist has to be optimistic. They have to believe in what they're doing. And they almost always say, oh, just in a few years. But you are correct that nuclear fusion, in theory, is the correct answer, because it does not have the same kinds of waste problems as traditional nuclear power. But we cannot make it work. We are producing very, very high temperatures, and they must be contained in a container, and is very, very difficult. So I like what your story was wonderful if it were true today, but it's not true. So yes, the claims of the companies that are starting are that, yes, we are almost there, but we've been saying that for 40, 50 years. Someday we will be there, but we cannot count on it today.
Thank you, Don, for this wonderful interaction with all of our students. I'm sure that they have enjoyed. Would you like to share any final concluding thoughts that you think that already whatever the points you wanted to make are already made?
No, thank you. And actually, I think we found the right technological solution eventually. Yeah. And so I can see that it is very late for you and many people are leaving. Yes. So, but thank you for asking. Those were very good questions. They were the kinds of questions I cannot answer. And that's the kind of question I think is the most important. Because look, the most important questions are ones for which we do not know the answer. The ones for which we know the answer, those are the easy questions. But today we must face up to the difficult ones, to the ones that will change our lives, change the world. So thank you.